Hello there, Master Hellish here, and welcome to an XV8 Crisis Battlesuit Let's Paint. This is the model we will be painting today that we built in a previous episode. And, yeah. So, first thing to do is, this is me just spray painting it black in the garden. This bit is sped up because it did take a little while. Keeping a nice distance away and just giving it short bursts all the way around. So the first thing to do when I actually paint these particular models, because I've done a couple before, is that I'm going to fill in all these little crevices, all these little marking areas with white. Okay, and then I just use my thumb or a tissue just to rub off the excess. It doesn't have to be neat at this point for what I'm going to do. There we go, so there's all the different crevices and parts all filled in white. Next, I'm just going to take some of the silver and I'm going to paint the lower legs, the ball sockets on the upper legs, the hands and the jet vents and the jet outputs on the jetpack. There we go, all in silver. And again, not perfectly neat, but it doesn't need to be at this stage. Okay. So now this is where I'm going to do some neatening up. Now I'm going to neaten up these white bits, just using some black here. I'm also going to neaten up some of the silver parts as well. So just going to neaten up the whole model, and this is where it starts to actually take shape. Just finishing off some of the neatening up on the legs here, and just going to quickly mention that yes, I'm not the best painter, and I'm probably not using the most recognised or perfect techniques, but I thought I'd show you how I do it and how I do my models. So this is what I do. If you want to do the same sort of way, then be my guest, but there are lots of videos out there from tremendous painters. Speaking of lots of videos, there's probably some videos out there that talk about the dry brushing technique, because this is what we're about to do now. Put some on your brush and then wipe most of it off. Now usually I use a softer brush than I do now. Dry brushes tend to be harder and bigger than normal brushes, but I'm using a very, very coarse brush because I want very coarse marks and flecks across the suit. So I'm going to dry brush the whole of the black areas of the suit all over in silver. But this isn't the final effect that we're going to have on the model though, because once I've gone over and dry brushed it all silver, like you can see here, I'm going to go over and dry brush it all black. And what that does, it creates, it not only does it bring the dry brushing of the silver down, but it almost turns the model black to black, but it becomes like a metallic black. And I also go over the silver, so the silver gets dry brushed black and the black ends up being a metallic black. And this is a technique that I developed over a while with dual dry brushing. You dry brush one thing and then dry brush back the same colour as the base coat, and it just lifts the base coat in a different way. It doesn't work just to lightly dry brush in the first metallic colour. You have to do it the way I did to get it to work. So here we go, the model has now been dry brushed in both ways. It creates a nice base and a nice effect, I think. The model doesn't look too perfect, it looks used. So, next thing I'm going to do here is the blue for the squad markings. Now, I've chosen to do these markings different for each squad. So this squad's going to have this part of the leg painted and maybe another part. He's probably going to have a little square patch put on his shoulder or something like that. And other squads I will paint different parts of the model, so might have a look at them later. So here's the marking on the shoulder. Again, I'm actually using a bigger brush than I normally do. Some of my best brushes, my smaller brushes, I'm not really up to scratch these days. I could probably do with getting them a couple more brushes before I move on and do any more Let's Paints, but I got through this particular Let's Paint with the brushes I had. There you go, you see I've done a little bit on the chest as well in blue. Just brings out some of the model a bit. Right, so the antenna. So similar to the crevices where I put the white in previously, on all the weapons and support systems and equipment like the antenna, I put blue in the crevice instead. And originally those little crevices were black, and I was using a green-red combo on the outside, but that was okay. But I then decided to try the blue, and it looked a lot better. I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to talk about the weapons a little bit more. So here's a burst cannon. So for these burst cannons and a lot of the other weapons, they're all done in a very similar sort of way. I'm only going to show you the burst cannon. No point going through them every single one. There's a lot of different parts, but there you go. Brush the main part silver of the barrel there, and then I'm just going to put some of the blue over where the crevices are, similar as we were doing there on the antenna. Doesn't have to be neat, and with the green it coats the blue quite well. Try not to get too much on. And here you see what I mean. I'm just putting some green now onto the antenna. The whole of the body except one piece will be green. Being careful not to get any of it into the crevice. Just trying to get my hand steady. Not the most steadiest of hands, but I get by. And with these painting schemes that I do on my models, because I'm not a perfect painter, okay, I accept that I'm an okay painter, but I'm not a perfect painter, and because of that, I try and make the effect of what the paint scheme is, and the effect of how it works when it's on the table, come over better than the individual minute pieces of painting. And that is more so with my Tyranids, which, spoiler alerts, I'm going to be doing a series 4 coming up soon, so keep an eye out for that. But there we go, so that's the green on the model, and we're now going to go and do the green on the weapon. And it's the same situation. Most of the weapon body then gets to be painted green, leaving the little blue gaps. Apologise, it's just not quite in focus there, but here we go, you can see better now. Just finished off the green, and there we go. We'll come back to that probably a little later, because it's pretty much done now. And there's our model for us to work on. So the model's all dry now, and we're going to add some red. So these smaller sections on the antenna, and a couple of little points on the weapon. There's a couple of little buttons that get a little dot of red on them, and these little sections on the antenna here also get red. So this is probably most fiddly bits about painting this model is just those little parts there. And there's also a little bit on the body that I like to do. So this bit here I felt needed a little something more. So inside there I just slosh a load of red in. All over the place. Just using my finger to remove a bit that I got on the front. That seems to have done the trick. And then from that little bit there, you see it's quite small. Just going to clean my brush. Always clean my brush on a regular basis. And get a little bit of green from out my palette. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to get the tiniest dot of green. I've got quite a lot of paint on my brush this time. Tiniest dots, there we go, of green, sorted. Now about paint on the brush, I don't like to put a lot of paint on my brush these days. I'd rather put too little paint on the model and then put another layer on, than blob way too much on. And that's something that in my early days of painting Warhammer, yeah, I used to do. I used to put way too much paint on these models, and then I'd struggle to make it neat. You are zoomed in quite a bit, and the camera seems to pick up more than the human eye. I mean, if I was looking at this at the distance that we are here, but not through the camera, I think my eye wouldn't necessarily be picking out the amount of detail that we're seeing here. The brain kind of patches it up, it kind of glosses certain parts over. Whereas here on the screen we actually get more detailed and magnified. So you really do on this video get to see the raw model very, very up close, I think. which is good for me to see, because this is the first time I've actually seen my model this up close digitally. So there we are, a bit of red on the helmet there, a bit of white, and then just because that white is so difficult to put in, just got a bit of black to neaten up round the white because they're recesses. So drop the white in the recess and then clear up round the top. Well, that's most of the model done now, so the last thing to do is base it up. What I do is I coat the whole base in a nice light brown here, and then what we'll do, we'll move across from that, and I do the top and side just as one coat. One coat of this paint isn't always enough on these bases, but the top coat is going to get some textured paint, some of the darker brown textured paint, which when dried I will then dry brush with the more creamier colour, which you will see on the screen in a moment, and then I go around and we'll do the base sides one more time. So there we are, just cleaning my brush up a little bit more, making sure I've got paint on it. I do use a palette for most shots, but here we go with the textured paint. And I think, okay, yeah, the model once you've painted it looks okay, but until you've done the base and done it properly, then it really doesn't finish the model off in any way. I did go through a phase earlier on in my Warhammer days where I wouldn't do the base, because my idea was to do all the bases at the same time. So here we are, just finishing off the dry brushing of the base. Struggled a little bit with this because my paint was just starting to go off. Probably next time I use that creamy dry brush, I'm going to need some new paint on that. And then the last thing to do is to just go around and put a coat of the lighter brown on the edge. I do prefer having a lighter brown lip. The darker brown textured paint matches my battle board quite nicely, but I like having this little bit that stands out. It helps you measure a little bit as well. And there we are. Model is done. So I've just popped the weapons on here. The only other thing that I've done between then and now is you can see that the ends of the cannons, on the burst cannons, I did with a little drill, just drill a hole with an Archimedes drill, and then just painted them black on the end there. So there we are, the finished model. Well, I've been Master Hellish. This has been a Let's Paint. Let me know what you think. Put your comments down below. And last thing to say is thank you very much for watching. And until next time, goodbye.